Attack, Detonate, Dominate. Oh, this build is absolutely broken! What crazy interactions make this build work so well? How to scale your damage properly and maintain your resources? We'll start with how the build works, then break down skill gems, gear, the passive tree and jewels. After that, we'll cover optimization and resource management, and finish with an epic fight against the Arbiter of Ash. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly how to make this build dominate in Path of Exile 2. In order to understand how everything works, we need to take a closer look at our main skill, Gas Arrow. This skill fires an arrow that creates a cloud of poisonous smoke, which can then be ignited for a massive explosion. Essentially, there are 3 damage phases: Arrow Impact, Poison Cloud, and Explosion. Now here's where things get interesting. The explosion claims to convert 100% of physical damage into fire, but it also deals over 400% of attack damage. At first, you might assume that scaling physical damage is the key, but that's only part of the picture. Attack damage isn't limited to physical, it includes all damage types. In this case, almost all of our explosions damage comes from lightning. When I first discovered this, my brain couldn't process it. A poison cloud explosion dealing lightning damage? But that's exactly what happens. To trigger the explosion, we need to ignite our enemies. There are a couple of ways to do this: manually with Flame Wall, or the better option, Radiant Grief. This unique will automatically ignite all the enemies in your presence, making the build incredibly easy to play. Each arrow creates a separate cloud that deals over 400% damage. Considering the fact that we can create over 30 clouds per second, I was able to achieve over 2.4 million DPS. And the best part? This build can clear all content in the game with just one button. Let's break down skill gems we're using in this build. Martial Tempo, to increase our attack speed and stack clouds even faster. Elemental Focus, increases damage significantly, and since enemies die so quickly, applying shock isn't priority. Lightning Infusion, to gain extra lightning damage. Next, we use Primal Armament to increase our damage by an additional 25%. And finally, Concentrated Effect to increase our damage by an impressive 40%. The last 2 gems may change depending on the situation, which we'll cover in the optimization section. Next, we use Barrage. This skill gives us the ability to concentrate a large amounts of damage in a very short period of time. For example, like here, where we destroy 3 packs of rare monsters with one shot. Just watch carefully in slow motion. We use Second Wind to be able to use this skill twice in a row without a cooldown. Premeditation to increase our attack by an additional 15%, and Arcane Tempo to cast this buff a little faster. We also use Shockwave Totem, but not for dealing damage, but rather as a buff totem. We use a triple font combo: Font of Rage, which will increase our attack by an additional 30%, Font of Blood for an additional HP regen, and Font of Mana for our mana regeneration. And believe me, this helps a lot when you're trying to stack the maximum number of clouds before a boss fight. The next skill we use is Herald of Thunder. At first, you might wonder why we're using this, since Elemental Focus prevents us from applying shock. But believe it or not using this cost us over 30k DPS. How did that happen? You'll find out the answer to this question in just a couple of minutes, when we take a look at our passive skill tree. Regarding support gems, they are not mandatory, although they will be a nice addition to our build, significantly increasing comfort and confidence. We use Clarity for additional mana regeneration, Precision to further increase our accuracy, and Herbalism to improve the effects of our flasks. The last skill on our list will be Wind Dancer. This is a decent layer of protection that increases our evasion. We use Vitality to regenerate life, Cannibalism to restore life after killing monsters, well, and Maim in order to slow down enemies if they manage to get close enough to hit us. Also, you can use Conductivity to reduce monster resistances, but given the specifics of using this build, I don't see possibility of casting this skill. During the casting time, you can inflict an additional 2 million damage to the boss. Perhaps it makes sense to use Blasphemy, but this requires additional testing. Now hit that like button and let's dive into our gear. We're using Death Harp, ideally a corrupted version with +4 additional arrows and extra soul cores for attack speed. This is hands down the most efficient weapon for this build. It is affordable and performs incredibly well. However, if you're looking for a high-end upgrade, the dual string bow with additional arrows, high lightning and physical damage, and +2 skills will technically output more DPS. But be warned, it comes at an insane cost, easily reaching hundreds of divines. Now let's discuss the quiver. We're interested in the base with double attack speed, high flat lightning damage, damage with bow skills, high accuracy rating, which we'll discuss later in the passive tree section, dex, and of course it will be nice to have additional +2 to skills. But in practice, I would say that all other parameters are much more important here. We're using Radiant Grief. This helmet is absolutely essential for this build, and the best part, it's dirt cheap on the market. Hand of Wisdom and Action, not a strict requirement. But once you start optimizing, you'll realize that these gloves contribute to 70% of total damage output. Since we stack a ton of intelligence and dexterity, they scale extremely well with this build. For boots, we prioritize high movement speed, evasion, and resistances. Flat mana and dexterity will also be a nice addition. Warrior Invictus grants increased attributes and mana, which plays a key role in our setup. Why so much focus on mana? I'll explain when we get to the passive tree section. I personally use Ingenuity Belt, but you can swap it out for any belt with high resistances and other useful stats. However, since rings contribute a massive portion of our damage, we need a belt that enhances our overall damage output. On the rings, we're primarily interested in flat lightning damage, int, dex, and of course resistances. A nice addition would be flat mana, evasion, or accuracy rating. For the amulet, we'll look for the same key stats, +2 skills, attribute, resistances, and mana. Extra spirit will be a nice bonus. Don't forget to subscribe, and now let's move on to the most exciting part, the passive skill tree. Let's start with ascendancy points. Adaptive capability. While it's technically a passing node, I consider it one of the most powerful skills in the game. This is what makes Gemling Legionnaire so flexible. Now the keynote we're focusing on is Enhanced Effectiveness. This doubles the bonuses from Strength, Intelligence, and Dexterity. We also choose Crystalline Potential to enhance the quality of our skills, and Implanted Gems for absolutely free +1 to all skills. Everything is simple here. Let's move on. First, we grab this early node because it's a great 1-point investment. Then, we move downward to grab the attribute cluster. We need all the strength, int, and dex we can get. Next, we take the area of effect cluster, which makes clearing much smoother, especially on the maps. And of course, attack speed cluster. Well, everything is obvious here. But what is not quite obvious is Lightning Rod skill. This is where things get interesting. Lightning Rod makes all non-crit damage count as lucky, meaning that every hit rolls twice, and the higher value is applied. Since lightning damage has a huge gap between minimum and maximum rolls, this effectively increases our real damage output, even if it doesn't show up on the DPS tooltip. For any lightning-based build, this is an absolute must-have. The next skill, Falcon Dive, has a huge effect on our build. We get an additional 1% to attack speed for every 250 accuracy. Let's break this down. Our character already has a fairly high dexterity. Enhanced effectiveness will double our accuracy. Our final accuracy exceeds 14,000, even without trying. If we divide it by 250, we get plus 57% to attack speed. That's a massive boost for a single node. Absolutely mandatory for this build. We take this node to increase our lightning damage while using Herald of Thunder. Over 30k DPS is a very good result for a single node. Absolutely necessary, no questions asked. Next, Falcon Technique. Since we're stuck in Dex anyway, we take this to further boost our attack speed. Proficiency and enhanced reflexes, more Dex scaling, more benefits. In Wildstorm, plus 15% more damage, acting as a multiplier for all our lightning damage. Just a huge boost. Pure power, plus 2% damage per 10 intelligence. We're stuck in Int anyway, so it's no-brainer. Finally, Mind over Matter, which allows us to use our mana as life. Since we're already stuck in intelligence, this will make it a natural defensive choice. Now let's talk about jewels, starting with unique ones. I'm using Prism of Belief with plus 3 to Gas Arrow, which is essential for our build. It only costs couple of divines, since Gas Arrow is rarely used. That's the beauty of off-meta builds. Top tier gear at bargain prices. The second unique jewel is Megalomaniac. I'm using one with Master Fletching and Swift Claw. Master Fletching boosts the bonuses from our quiver by 30%, which has a huge impact. Swift Claw increases attack damage by 25%, effectively amplifying all outgoing damage. Regarding the rest of the jewels, I tried to put together something similar to this one. High lightning damage, double attack speed plus accuracy, which essentially turns this jewel into a triple attack speed. I'll show them all now, you can press pause to take a closer look. Now let's talk about optimizing the build for mapping, bosses, and smooth gameplay. One of the biggest challenges with this build is mana consumption. With an attack speed of 5.5 hits per second, our mana drains almost instantly, which is a huge issue since mana is also our effective health pool. So how do we fix this? Well, first of all, we reduce the cost with our unique Ascendancy node. Next, we allocate Price of Freedom to our amulet, reducing the cost by another 10% and converting 18% of the remaining cost into life. Now let's talk about mapping optimization. For clearing maps effectively, we swap Primal Armament to Inspiration, which reduces mana cost even further, and Concentrated Effect to Magnified Effect, which expands our area of effect to nearly full screen. This way we can spam our skills freely without running into mana issues, while still maintaining high damage output across large areas. For boss fights, we switch back to Primal Armament and Concentrated Effect. Then we activate Barrage, drop a Shockwave Totem for buffs, and start spamming Poison Clouds. Even if they don't die instantly, they will be stunned, making it easy to finish them off. This makes our build one of the best boss killers in the game. Simple, efficient, and incredibly powerful. No complex mechanics, no excessive button presses, just stack, detonate, and dominate. I hope you enjoyed this video. I would greatly appreciate your subscription and would be happy to answer any comments you may have. Finally, here is the battle with the Arbiter. Enjoy!